Okay, welcome. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you to everybody online who's joining us for this event. We really appreciate your time to come and join us for this event today. My name's Mel Malloy. I'm part of the Launchpad team at Murdoch University, and we're all about helping students through their entrepreneurial journey and developing skill sets for their future careers. We're really passionate as well about engaging with the startup community and sort of creating opportunities like this, events, networking opportunities, startup mornings, just so that our students can engage with the wider community and develop their networks. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the lands of the Whadjuk and Binjara Noongar people and pay our respects to their dynamic culture and the leaders past, present and emerging. So I'd also like to thank Spacecubed. Spacecubed, we've built a great relationship with the Spacecubed team over the last year through the different events we've run, and they've been really generous in letting us host this event here today, so we just want to acknowledge them as well. So on to today, we're really delighted to partner with Megan De Borello. Megan is a great supporter of female founders through her business Behind the Brands, and she's put together a great panel of women today in response to the UN's theme for International Women's Day, creating equality for today for a sustainable tomorrow. So I'd really like to pass over to Megan, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from our panel. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Mel. So we have three amazing speakers today on our panel, and we are going to ask them a few probing questions about their journey and then open it up to anyone in the audience or who's joining us live as well to ask questions. So we like to have a bit of an informal chat to make it conversational so you can get the most out of it as well. So joining us today we have Yaxi Zhan, who is a Mongolian-born Chinese woman, and she grew up in Inner Mongolia, China's Wild West. She moved to another Wild West, WA, in 2004 with nothing but a suitcase and limited English skills. In 2006, Yaxi graduated from Curtin University with a master's degree in accounting and moved into the mining industry. Fast forward to 2017, Yaxi founded Accelerate Resources and took the mining company to IPO on the ASX in February 2018. She is the mother of a 9-year-old girl and the 2021 winner of the Women in Leadership Australia-China Alumni Association. Thanks for joining us, Yaxi.
Thanks, Megan.
We also have Nina, and I asked Nina, and I've known Nina for a while, and I asked how to pronounce your last name because I've never had to say it. So Nina Hjortlund?
Well done.
Thank you. Nina is the founding director and CEO for Australia for Cedar, Tanzania, which is a not-for-profit that creates positive, sustainable change in rural Tanzania. She was born in Denmark and moved to Perth 2.5 years ago. After living in Tanzania for 13 years, she leads a team across borders, continents, time zones and cultures. Because she is not busy enough, she's currently undertaking a micromasters at Queensland University in Leadership and Global Development. And Nina strongly advocates for not-for-profits to be led and seen as businesses, as they are not in the game to make zero profits, but instead should utilise those profits they make to create sustainable and lasting change in the world. Welcome, Nina. And we have Hayley Rolfe on the end. Hayley is an environmental scientist, waste management and circular economy specialist, and she's got a broad range of experience in project delivery across a range of environmental policy, community engagement and sustainable waste management. She is a Murdoch Uni alumni, and she is a passionate environmental protection advocate, board member and recovering startup founder. Yes, you are. Welcome, Hayley. So, Yaxi, we're going to start with you. You're definitely challenging stereotypes by founding and leading a mining company, and I love that you are clearly ambitious. Was there a particular significant turning point that actually led you to start your business?
Yes, so I started, as Megan said, I started my career in 2006 in a mining company, Sino Steel. I think it fit my profile quite well. So being the Chinese and in Australia as the SOE, investment type of mining companies. So I sort of climbed my corporate ladder for good 6-7 years to about 2012 and fallen pregnant. I was pregnant with Lisa, my little girl. So what I find at that point in time, I started to reach the glass ceilings and wasn't getting involved in the major projects or board meetings. And I find that my voice hasn't been heard and the opportunity has just passed to someone else, and I find it's really unfair. And back then, I just doesn't have the right skill sets to have these courageous conversations with the board or the directors. But at that time, I sort of said to myself, well, if no one values me, I just gonna come out on my own and start my own business. So that's to me is a turning point of like I have a lot to offer, but hasn't been valued. And then later throughout the sort of entrepreneur journey is that there are times I find it's quite challenging, but every time people challenges me, doesn't believe in me, is sort of a fire me up. So that's how I sort of keep pushing myself and progress my career to today.
So less than 1 in 5 leadership roles across global mining companies are held by women. What gender bias have you actually faced being in this industry?
Yeah, so I think I don't come across as a typical ASX listed mining company founding director. So to start with, and I find one of the interesting things is that if I go travel with my male colleagues and we're going to the investment forums, and you can clearly see he will get the business card, not me. So it's like they're the ones, they are male, they are certain age groups, and they have a geological degree, deemed to be the directors or the founders of a mining company, not me. So I find that's really frustrating. And secondly is we're going to the investment forums or the brokerage house, so meeting with the brokers, and then that is another thing is the set of questions I'm getting is different from my male colleagues. The set of questions I'm getting more of risk-oriented. What is your exploration risk? What's your environmental risk? And what about the capitals? And then my male colleagues would rather get, what's the project potential? Like, what's your plan? How are you going to deliver the result? And then I have to have this mindset and mental notes to myself is, I'm going to have to somehow change the question in my favor or give the answer that I think gonna promote the company, and then to change their mindset to do the blue skies rather than focus on the risk. So I think it's just how to, as you said, the stereotypes of I'm not fit in completely, and then how do I make my mark in the industry, and secondly is how to sort of communicate with my shareholders, investors, stakeholders to see that even though I'm not a female and considerably young, but I still be able to run a good company. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see any change happening within the industry? Are there any more women getting into mining or in the roles that you sort of have too?
So throughout when I started Accelerate 2018 on the ASX listed to today, 5 years, there's probably only one female did exactly what I've done. So I think that there's a lot of talent in the pool, but very limited of us going to getting the top job. So I don't think that there's significant change or shift in the proportion or percentage wise. But there's definitely more talents there. So there is need a bit of a change, probably from the top. And also us, ourselves as a females, need to change as well in a way that to come out to the function like this, to get inspired, to have that network, to communicate. Because if you're looking at males, they spend so much time to social and to network and to build that networks and to reach out. So I think what we need to do a lot more, like we need to do that, to have that network and invest in ourselves so that we can have that change as a group.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point you make about the networks, and I know we've sort of discussed it a lot, Nina, and I think we've talked about it with you, Hayley, as well, that men do tend to have more networks and support around them, whereas women don't, and that is a key factor of, I guess, getting doors opened for you as well. Nina, so you lived in Tanzania for 13 years before you came to Australia. What was actually the path that led you there?
To begin with, it was actually a holiday. Crazy. Yeah, I know, believe it or not.
13-year holiday.
A 13-year holiday. But yes, I stayed on, and I fell in love with the country, and it was a very humbling journey for myself, living amongst people living in extreme poverty, and learning the rawness of life, that if you don't earn money, you do not eat. So it has taught me a lot about being grateful for the life that we have and not taking things for granted. But it has also taught me a lot about the people and the culture in which I now work every day, which I think has been a big factor in our success. Mm-hmm.
Did you always want to get into not-for-profit work?
No, I didn't come to Tanzania with the outset of non-for-profit work. As I said, I ended up there by coincidence, by holiday. So I did a lot of other business before I got into non-for-profit. And it came out of a need that I saw in the area. And it was to meet a need, mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So before you moved to Tanzania on your holiday, what did you study and what was your career path like?
I studied Arabic and Middle Eastern studies, which of course has nothing to do with what I do today, other than it has taught me skills of leadership, it has taught me skills of research, it has taught me ways of problem solving. So it has definitely taught me lots of skills that was Arabic and Middle Eastern studies was less relevant, mm-hmm. because it has taught me lots of skills that I use every single day.
Okay, so Australia for Cedar Tanzania assists rural communities. How does it do so?
We do so in many, many different ways. We started out first asking the communities in which we work, how can we help? What are your pain points? What are the things that could make your life better? How do you envision a good life could look like? What are you missing in your day-to-day life? And one of the most important things that they said was access to quality healthcare, because there was none in the area. And for example, a lot of women are dying in childbirth in Tanzania. In fact, 11,000 mothers every year die, and that's about 1 every 50 minutes. So while we're talking here, 1 mother will die during childbirth. And that was a big issue for people. So we thought to ourselves, what can we do? We can buy some land and then we can build a hospital. So that's what we did. And learned to run a hospital and manage a hospital. We got some equipment out of the US. So yeah, that's what we do now. And a lot of our other projects then came from there. So we started talking about people with disabilities and other people, they can't get to our hospital, so we taught them to ride off-road motorbikes so we can provide medical services at their homes. We started doing entrepreneurship job training for young women, and have done gender-based violence programs, and many more programs for the 35,000 people that we are supporting.
Okay. It's amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you.
We're just going to go down to Hayley. So you're an environmental scientist. What exactly does that mean?
Well, it can mean a raft of things. So when I left home at 17, right after high school, I went to a military college in Canberra and did a degree in politics. And as I was shoveled from, one boring desk job to another for the next few years, I just realised that all I wanted to do was be outside. And so as my return of service obligation came, I had investigated where I needed to go to uni in order to get a degree that would let me work outside. And I hit on Murdoch, which of course was back in my hometown. So at the time, so we're talking late 90s, Murdoch was the university in WA that offered like a well-rounded education in the environmental sciences. So instead of just being a science degree with, an emphasis on biology or botany, it actually did everything from pollution management, ecology, right through to atmospheric science. It was great and it was unique. And it also, unusually at the time, was incredibly flexible. So after I got out of the Air Force and convinced my somewhat reluctant boyfriend to marry me and move to London with a backpack, we kind of made a home there for a little while. And I actually did almost the entirety of a 4-year environmental science degree by correspondence from the UK. And I would come home and do my lab sessions, and that was an excuse to get home and see my family each year. And it was incredible, but even at the end of that, what does an environmental scientist do? Well, how long's a piece of string? You can be an atmospheric scientist, you can be an ecologist, you can be a botanist, you can do environmental approvals to get projects up. You know, it's really varied. And so you end up being a generalist. So I've done everything from waterways management and weed and feral animal control to taking kids out and showing them about macroinvertebrates in their pond, in their local pond, through to, you know, you name it. We did some air quality projects when I first joined the department here, and most recently I've been in waste management.
Okay. So I actually read that you built the WA plastic bag regulations in 2018. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I did the legislative work for that. So there's obviously a team that, you know, the minister decides what gets banned and what doesn't. Obviously, can't ban anything without the minister getting on board. And so we had a new government and there was a push to do that. So I was just lucky, really. I was in the right place at the right time. But it was a super fun project. I got a taste for banning things. So I went back just as a contractor recently and we did the single-use plastics ban as well to kind of build on the success of that project. But it was really amazing. One of the great things about that project is we did a lot of community engagement and surveying. We partnered with Plastic Free July and the Boomerang Alliance, and that gave us a remit to actually go out and do real scientifically robust surveys of West Australian households, and we got to the point where overwhelmingly we were finding people were totally up for it. They needed something that was more than just, you need to do better, you need to remember your bag when you go to the supermarket. They actually needed to not have a bag available to them in order to force that behaviour change. So yeah, it was great.
Interesting. So you call yourself a recovering startup founder.
Yeah.
And when I first met you, you had Ardea Waste, which subsequently you have stopped or you've closed down. What was the entrepreneurial journey for you like?
It was mostly amazing. It kind of started in this room, actually. So I had an idea coming out of, you know, doing a lot of waste reform at the department. I had an idea that was kind of burning a hole in my brain that I needed to follow up on. And I came and pitched it to a startup weekend that I wanted to build a company around waste, but specifically commercial quantities of waste. So it was going to provide services to businesses. And, you know, we got a team up and we spent the weekend working on it. And I met my co-founder in that weekend. And we, after the weekend, we kind of went and built a company. I had no idea what it was going to take to run a business. I had worked for other people, whether it be NGOs or governments, for my entire career. I really had no idea. You know, I was starting from scratch. It was like going back to being a 20-year-old straight out of school. Everything was new. So it was exciting from that perspective. Really frightening, but exhilarating as well. But what I guess we didn't really realise was someone has to buy your product, and they need to really want it, to go out of their way to do something differently, to actually make decisions in a different way and spend money on something in a different way. It is enormously difficult if you're not just selling a thing. Like if you're selling a widget and your widget's really attractive, you know, there's a simple transaction that everybody understands. And so we really, I mean, God, I could write a book on all of the things that we did wrong, but the key things I think that we didn't anticipate was the difficulty to sell something new and explain it in a way that people could understand and really get behind. And also, if you have no money, it's really difficult to build things. And particularly if you're trying to build tech, if you don't have money coming in, that's a really tough challenge.
Yeah. And so Ardea Waste was essentially a tech company. We know tech is a male-dominated industry. Did you find it difficult being a woman in tech?
I didn't find it any more difficult being a woman in tech than I did being a woman in waste. You know, if you're a woman in an industry that is all guys, it's tough. We were pretty lucky. We were in an accelerator program in 2019, and we got hooked up with some people who helped us with the early version of our tech. The really hard thing about the tech side of it was that I'm not qualified to do computer science or build a platform, and neither was my co-founder, and that was a big issue. That was a massive gap in our business, and that meant that every time we wanted to build something, we had to go and find money in order to get someone to build it for us. And it was finding the money that was really hard work. We worked continuously on it pretty much for 2 years, and we approached it. We had a kind of a double-pronged attack going on, where I would go and try and raise money externally from governments or from investors, and my co-founder Narem would actually be selling the business hard and trying to get customers, and the whole focus was on trying to get money so we could build the tech. We just didn't get there, unfortunately, and we got tired of asking and being told no in the end.
Funding is a massive issue for startups and founders, especially if you are a female, unfortunately, as well. There's not a lot of funding around there. Do you think the funding part was probably the key reason why the company sort of didn't take off?
Oh, absolutely. I think if you've got money coming in and there's a lot of slush funds, you can do a lot of things to keep a business afloat. You can pay for marketing. You can really sell hard. You can employ people to help you sell. People who know how to sell is a good start, and they cost money. But also you can be pivoting, and if something doesn't work, you can be experimenting and trying new things and doing that. But all of those things cost time and money.
Yeah. I read a stat yesterday that 29% of funded companies have at least one female co-founder. So not a lot of women, not a lot of female-founded companies actually get funded, unfortunately. Yaxi, I'm going to circle back to you. I want to talk more about listing on the stock exchange and the experience of taking the company to IPO, how that actually was. And you obviously had to raise funds to take your company to IPO as well. Can you just walk us through that?
Yeah, for the resource industry, it's slightly different. So for the exploration especially, we're not valued, or the valuation wasn't based on your revenue, it's more of the potentials. So then I think in Perth, NWA is a great place. So especially in West Perth, we call it almost like a mining capital city here. So we used to follow the sort of the money come from the UK or Canada, but in the last couple of years, Perth become this capital city for mining investment. So when the money comes into the industry, it creates these positive vibes, because then the more money going to the ground, the positive news coming out, the more discoveries, and the more investments come in to join this investment sort of a trend. So when I started in 2017, I had the two businesses beforehand. So one is in gemstone mining. So no one says that that's proper mining company. But then for me, it's actually taken me from the very early stage of explorations to dealing with people have a zero training or educations in their 70s in the mining hall, have zero respect to females, and all the way to corporate, to brokers. So that's a big expansion for me, is the experience. So now I have to take that business from explorations to mining, to trading, to shipping. So it gives me really sort of a good experience on how the industry actually works. And then from that is that without, as you said, without money, without funding, there's a couple of challenges. Number one is you can't get a project up running. Secondly, cannot attract the talent to the people. Thirdly is you don't get better projects, because one project might not work. You're going to have to be able to attract people with the projects come to talk to me, because I don't know where they are. So then the only way leads to have this dream of running a proper mining companies and go listing. So that's the starting point of I say, well, what I need to do is become an ASX listed company. What helped me throughout the journey, very, very importantly, is have a mentor and to someone been there, done that, and really see what's in me without me saying that is this mentor. And he has been in the industry for 20 years and have said that, okay, Yaxi, you can do it. The listed company is the easiest thing. It's not like that, but that seed is planted in me and someone believes in me more than I do, and that actually get me going. And then after that is, secondly, is just to get yourself ready. Listing is like lots of documentations and the process. It's a very systematic. It's a transformation from the private company to a public company. Like say, if this is my business, it is not mine anymore. I have to change my mindset to say this is a public company. Everything I do have to abide by the rules. So that's a big mindset. That stops quite a lot of people to transition from private to public. Because if you're still running a business, like as if this is your private, it's mine, I'm going to be in control, then no investor is going to trust you, and you cannot attract talented people and the money and the funding and the projects. So that is a big mindset, is I started this, but it's not mine, but I still have the vision to drive the business to mining, to going to the next level. So that is the passion and the visions unchanged. So the IPO process is number one, to get a project, to get an idea, and secondly is to go out as early as possible. Is don't hold back to go asking for money, and then so lots of sort of people I know is hold back quite a lot. They say I'm not ready, don't want to go to the market, wanted to wait, have probably the apps or resources ready. You're never going to be ready, but then you're going to have to go as early as possible. As if this is a beta, you test using the market to test out, like, do I need to change my business model? Do I need to change business partners? Do I need to change something to making sure that works? So go out as early as possible. And then the final part is market not going to be ready, but you have to, like, legal work, your auditings and your team, your presentations, those are very sort of documented the process to get it done and be systematic, be diligent with us. So have someone, again, have a cultural mentor there to make you accountable to just to get it done. And then wait, say for me is from when I started in April, market is no good. There was no money in the market. It was really hard, knock on the doors and then just get knocked back. But then I was ready in September, and all of a sudden the market changed. So there was a big pilbara gold rush. There was so much money flooded into the market, they don't know where to put. So everywhere they made the money, so they're willing to invest. I catch that wave, and I'm gonna get a company like listed, raised sufficient fund to get the IPO. So I would say, so those are the sort of challenges to go from the private to public. Is one is mindset, be ready, just sort of diligently doing the things that you can and under your control, and go out to keep asking. Yeah.
Fantastic. It's such a process.
Yeah.
Nina, you're undertaking some really interesting projects in Tanzania, and the latest revolves around mushrooms. Can you walk us through it, and how important is it to you that the projects you're undertaking are sustainable for the community?
But sustainability is everything, and for us, our mushroom project is really illustrating this in so many ways. So what we are going to do now, we are going to grow mushrooms in Tanzania within the local community. So not only are we teaching women or people with disabilities to grow mushrooms, and particularly these groups, because they either cannot own land or work the land and find it difficult to find ways that they can earn money in because there is no job opportunities, there's no electricity, no water in the area. Traditionally, the women will stay at home and the men would go out fishing during the night in little dugouts. So there's not many opportunities, to accelerate within work in any way. So the mushrooms are a good crop because they don't need a lot of water. There's a quick return on investment, which we as businesswomen will appreciate. There's 8 weeks from you start until you can harvest, and you can grow them all year round. You can grow them in a bucket in your house. You don't need a lot of facilities. You don't need anything around it. And mushrooms also need a nutritional demand in the area. We see 30% of children in the communities we're working with experiencing stunted growth and development, and we see iron deficiencies, and oyster mushrooms can meet these demands, both nutritional value and a high content of iron. So all these things are positive for choosing mushrooms. We are then also having a centralized place where we are going to grow these mushrooms in a community centre we just have refurbished. So all these mushrooms we are then going to dry, and we're exporting them out of the country to Singapore, where we have a buyer, because this can then, both for the self-esteem of the people that we are having to grow these mushrooms, that they are actually creating a product that is valued internationally, that is something that is in demand, that we have a value-added product that is being sought after. We have already a buyer that can buy everything that we can possibly produce for the first 6 months. So that is fantastic. And giving that confidence to the people is just amazing. Second of all, also the revenue we're going to create from these mushrooms, from dried mushrooms, is going to go back into all our projects and going back in to support our healthcare and to cover a lot of the costs to run our hospital. And then we can achieve a much higher degree of self-funding and not rely on sourcing funds from outside our organisation.
Mm-hmm. At the moment, you rely a lot on grants and outside funding. How difficult is that to have a sustainable model, I guess, for business to rely on grants and other funding?
Oh, it's a lot of hard work, just like it is for any other business. Raising funds is really hard, and especially, as a non-profit, we don't have a tangible product to give in return. We can tell people, like, how do you like to save the world? Or, and just give us some money. They don't get a tangible product back in their hands. So it's a hard sell, and it takes up a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of, grant writing is a really dry process, and it's like doing your exams all over again, months and months of sitting of writing and telling people why you're the most important case in the world, where all the other applicants are probably just as important. It is a hard sell, and that's why I want to achieve a much higher degree of self-funding within our organisation.
Yep. And you've started to do that. You have an offshoot, Artifacts.
I do, yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So this is another income stream within our organisation, where we have launched. It was just in 2020, actually, during the worst bit of the pandemic, when it just hit. And we started importing quality craft from East Africa, importing here to Australia and having as a retail business online, where all the revenue from that business as well goes back into everything we do in Tanzania as well. So jump on the website, make some shopping.
The key there is to diversify.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Hayley, you've got a strong interest in the circular economy.
Sure.
Can you actually share with us what exactly the circular economy is, how it works, and how it can be, I guess, applied to business?
Well, really, the way that we consume resources at the moment is what they call the linear economy, where, you have primary resources that are farmed or mined. They're manufactured into the products that we use or consume, and then there's waste, and we dispose of it. And we do a little bit of recycling on the sides. It's not that we don't recycle anything, but we don't recycle much. And most of the things that we manufacture and consume are lost to us. And we have this kind of net loss of resources going on since the Industrial Revolution. We have this enormous waste problem in the developed world, particularly where we just have nowhere else to put this stuff. It creates pollution. It's just, it's driving climate change in a lot of cases, and it's a nightmare. And there's a lot of people thinking about how do we maintain our developed lifestyles but reduce our impact on the planet. So the circular economy really talks about the fact that we need to keep resources in the system. Once we've dug something up or grown something, we need to maintain the energy and the material value of that thing, or the materials in that thing, in the system. So we've got to find ways of reusing, extending life, of recompounding, or taking things apart and putting them back together in new ways, or it can go from the very simple of just we just need extended manufacturer responsibilities for waste, so when we finish or we break something that we've bought, we can send it back to a manufacturer, it can be repaired or remade into something new, which is a fairly simple process, to things that are enormously complex. So there's a big call for sort of chemical and metallurgical responses to breaking materials or manufactured materials back down into their component products in order to put them back in the market so they can be made into new things for us. So it goes from the very simple through to the very complex, but basically it's the maintenance of materials and energy in the system.
So I should tell my husband it's okay to keep getting stuff off Marketplace.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that the growth in things like Gumtree and Marketplace and people, combing verges in checkout week is a really, it almost harks back to the 50s where our parents were really thrifty. Everything got used until it just could not possibly be used anymore. And if they didn't need something, well, then there was someone that could use it for something else. We've just become very disposable in the way that we approach the things that we use and how we consume. So the circular economy is just another way of caring for the earth, of approaching waste management, of addressing climate change. It encompasses all of those things.
This question for all of you. Why do you think it's important to observe International Women's Day?
Well, I've got the mic, so I'll go first. I think women have to be part of the solution for sustainability. So harking back to your changing climates, women are, and people, particularly women in marginalised and vulnerable communities, feel the impacts of environmental degradation and climate change more than most, right? So people who have marginal access to clean water, who are living in communities that are prone to natural disasters, and we don't need to look very far these days to work out how that's going, even in our own backyard. We also find that women are definitely more vulnerable to violence and family violence in times of disaster, and disasters are just piling up. And unfortunately, unless you've been living under a rock, it's becoming really obvious that those disasters are coming at us thick and fast at the moment. And there needs to be women at the forefront of not just helping save the planet, the mitigation factors in helping the environment, but also the adaptations, because in a lot of cases it's gone too far. We can't turn back the clock now. This is our new reality, and women are impacted by those changes, and we need to be making the decisions about how we're going to move forward as a community.
Mm-hmm. So just staying with you for a second, Hayley. Women's representation and leadership tends to drive better outcomes because they tend to think of families and communities when they're making decisions. How can we encourage more women to get into leadership roles to actually start driving this change?
I think when I talk to women, they want to see change. So I think it's just about action. So it's really easy to despair when you see, Sydney underwater or Brisbane underwater or, New South Wales on fire. It's easy to just despair. And there's a lot of emphasis, in the wellness community, and I don't want to say that it's not great to do yoga in the morning or anything like that. It's all good. We've got to take care of ourselves and take responsibility for that. But our own actions, me living my values is not necessarily going to translate to global change, right? We need structural change. We need people to step up into leadership positions and make different decisions that impact our whole community. I can downsize my car, but that's not going to change the fact that we're in the middle of a climate crisis. But I can run for my local council, or I can, when I'm really angry, get out on the street and jump up and down outside Parliament House. Acting, I think, is the antidote to despair, and we need to take what action we can, but we need to really step up, there's no doubt.
Yeah. Yaxi, what does International Women's Day mean to you?
I think this year is the theme is equalities and sustainabilities, and I think for me it's in sort of industry, in a very male-dominated industry, equality is so important. I find this when I go into a room, sometimes I'm struggling to find any females to talk to, and sort of push me out of my comfort zone, like we all do, to strike up conversations, but not to talk about crickets or some other sort of spouse, but talk about business. So, yeah, so I think with more females comes into the industry and challenge ourselves to go into the next levels, taking the leadership role, will change and create more opportunities and for the next generation, the generation after. I think that's quite important, is we're all taking the responsibilities, do our best, and then to reach our own potentials, and so that we created the pathways and encourage others. And I do find my own work, and I'm probably the one quite sort of take the whole team approach and then slows when the time is required, not to sort of go 100 miles charging one direction. So that does create more gender balance at the board, to making sure that every project that we assessed does have long-term views and then going to that, ultimately going to production. So I do feel that with more females coming into every industries will help. It will help. Yeah.
I was at an event yesterday, and I thought it was a really interesting point that a lady made, that we should get rid of terms like primary carer or primary income earner, because it's saying that the other person is less than the primary person as well. And so that is just changing our language is one step that we can make towards gender equality too. Yeah. International Women's Day. Nina, what does it mean?
It means so many things to me. But one point I wanted to make is women supporting other women and believing in other women. For example, in our organization, I have a business partner in the mushroom project, because I obviously don't know a lot about mushrooms necessarily, but I have met a fabulous woman that lives in Israel, and she's a chemical engineer, and she knows a lot about mushrooms and mushroom growth. She's also a mother. She has 4 children under the age of 8. I have 2 children living at home with me that are 10 and 9. Our executive director in Tanzania is a new mum. So you can imagine what our Zoom calls look like. There's always a child or a dog, or somebody's being breastfed, or somebody is in the background vomiting, or something is always happening. And that's okay. It's okay, because we know we can do this, because we support each other. Oh, do I need to call you back in 5 minutes? It's perfectly okay. It doesn't mean that that woman is not professional. It doesn't mean that she cannot do her job. She's just working harder than most people, because she's a mother and doing the job. And we are all doing that. And I encourage that we can all be that for each other. And yes, it means sometimes I'm taking calls in the car while I'm driving my kids to ballet or picking them up from school. And so the rest of the people I'm working with. And we need to accept and support each other, that that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. Do we have any questions for our panellists at all? Anyone can ask them anything about their career, their journey, what they've experienced.
I have one question each for for you first. So when you did your pricing model, what is the right price tag to go and ask for money?
Do you mean in seeking funding, or to sell the product?
Sell the product.
So one of the difficulties in our business model was that we were basically on-selling other people's services. So that made it quite tricky. So we would shop around the way that our model worked was if you told me what sort of waste that you had, I would find the most environmentally responsible solution for you. I'd also find the other legal solutions for you, not necessarily the best, but some, and we would present the marketplace to you with our surcharge on top. We didn't talk about what that surcharge was, we would just present you with that model. So I think we added 20% on the top of someone else's price. The way that worked out for our customer was that, generally speaking, it's cheaper to recycle something than to put it in the ground. So you could often add 20% to the cost to recycle something and still come out cheaper. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. Could I please ask?
Yeah, sure.
You did mention that you were new to the country at a particular time and you did not speak the language. How did you get your first step into the mining industry? Did you have the mining experience?
No, my first degree is in computer science, second degree in accounting finance, because I just, when growing up in China, you get told what you're doing, right, from the parents, no argument whatsoever. So 4 years of in computer science, I hated program. My graduation was program a tree on the computer screen. So for me, I like to talk to people. So when I come to Australia, I choose accounting finance. And when I graduate with the degrees, that one I sort of like, one I hated, I sort of started to cold call all the mining companies, Chinese-backed mining companies here in Perth. So then, and there was a Sino Steel is the one picked up my call and got me an interview. I still remember my first salary back in 2006 was $27,000. I loved it. It was like young, single, no debt, party time. I loved it. So I think what I like about the industry is so diversified. It's like people are very interesting, and back in good old days, and there's a lot of funding in the industry. They hire the best and best comes in to bring the project. So for me, I had a great exposure for the 3 years, from exploration approvals, environmentals, heritage agreements, and ports and infrastructures. Sort of my curiosity bring me to quite a lot of places. So now looking back, I think one thing is how did I end up in the mining industry is my curiosities. And I know my strengths. Don't know that much back then, but I know, like, okay, the Chinese English is my point of difference. I need to utilize that. Secondly, I'm curious, always very curious to know like how they doing things, why, what can go wrong, how do things go wrong, and then brings me further and further into my career. And then when my curiosity gets stopped, when it has these glass ceilings and people doesn't give me the opportunities, I sort of just come out to my own things and probably more of a challenge, and then to say how far can I push this to go a bit further. Yeah.
You didn't get to work on your computer science degree in Australia at all?
I don't know.
You went into accounting first.
Yeah.
To get your first break here.
Yeah, so I think now looking back, everything I learned is not a waste. So, because when I was doing the doing the accounting finance in a mining company, so my first task was implement a new accounting system in a mining camp. That actually because I know how computer thinks, and so it actually gave me that competitive advantage. Actually gave me the opportunity to go to site, facing the challenges, know that not everyone nice like in a corporate office, like people are very abrupt, and because that's the environment really tough, it's actually make me tougher. So not make me sort of this just new fresh graduate come out of universities, but getting tough, be able to speak the language, understand sort of for the things that I sort of stand up for myself. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Do you have a question?
I have 3 questions. Okay. The first one was about becoming a mother and also having a career. I know that Yaxi and Nina mentioned that both in some way. But how did you sort of get around that point of when's the right time, but I also want to follow my career? And did you get any discrimination against you once you became a mother? So, yeah.
Well, I think I just could not do it. I guess for me it's been important to be a role model to my children, to my girls, to show them that that women can achieve what they set out to do, what they dream to do. And I want them to dream big, so I dream big. And show them that it's possible to run a business, to be a mother, to do everything that we set out to do. That it's not, we sometimes our own biggest limitation, and we can get past that. So everything I do, I look at my children, it's like I want them to dream bigger than I do. So I dream big.
And you sort of, yeah, so you sort of had your daughter and you're at the height of your career.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, I think it's because I felt pregnant, I get pushed the sidelines. I just does not like it, and I find they just put me into a specific box. Even though I worked to 1 a.m.s and like even like I was 30 whatever weeks or 32 or 38 weeks pregnancy, I can't remember now. Put my feet on the gym, but I'm sitting in the office and still doing my overtimes. But you do get put into this specific box as if I'm not. Like treat my career seriously. I got my parents mobilized here as my support. Like 6 months when I go into pregnant, I even planned my pregnancy to deliver the baby in December. So that in mining, December, January, February, 3 months is quite a period of time. I planned everything, and I just find like if people doesn't value my effort, time for me to move on. So I have done that, and so I think it also created the opportunity. So because it's 2012 is a year is mining had a downturn, I probably come to on my own being an entrepreneur worst case sort of time possible. It was massive redundancies and BHPs and Rio Tintos, but then people does have time to talk. And people does have the time to sit down to talk to you, tell their stories, and you get inspired. So then sometimes like for me to looking back and go, well, I should have done things slightly different, choose the better timing. But then hasn't experienced the mining cycle, I wouldn't be able to pick the time. So that is the right time for me. Yeah.
I don't think there's ever a good time to have a child.
No.
It just...
Although I had my son while I was studying, which was actually a good time. So when I was doing my second degree, I had my son, but I've raised my son to be a feminist. He's going to make some amazing woman an amazing house husband one day. And he's totally on board with that. So the great thing about the sort of job that I did was I just took him with me. So he was on my back in a backpack for a lot of his childhood. I remember one day we were down visiting Lewin Winery. So when I was working in Margaret River, I was doing a lot of river restoration, and a lot of the waterways in the southwest are on private property, and they run through some of these wonderful big vineyard properties. And I had an early morning appointment to meet with the vigneron because that was the only time he could fit me in, and it was on the school run. So there was my son, out in the middle of the vineyard on the creek side in his wellies at 7 o'clock in the morning with Dave Winstanley, who's the vigneron at Lewin. And Dave looked at him and he went, "Aren't you going to school today, mate?" Because Locke didn't have his school uniform on, and Locke was about 6 at the time. And he went, "Yeah, I'm going to school. I'm going to school after this." And Dave said, "Where's your school uniform?" He went, "There's a bit of a washing crisis in our house, Dave." Because every now and again things just fall off, right? Sometimes the washing doesn't get done when you're a working mum.
Yeah, that's right. It's hard. We had, I have 2 children, a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old, and my second child, I had him just before we went into lockdown and the pandemic hit. And we had our Women in Business Forum a couple of weeks ago, and we had a sundowner and an all-day event. And so I hadn't seen him in probably 2 days because he stayed at my mother-in-law's so I could get everything done. And when we were doing the pack down after the event, my husband brought both the kids to help and run around. And my 2-year-old just lost it. And because he was tired and he'd been picked up from daycare and he hadn't seen me, he was causing havoc. Fiona was there, she will tell you. And he discovered the water cooler and was up at the water cooler turning the water on, and I'm like, "Stop!" And he's just like, "Ah!" And I couldn't get him away. And I think at one point I was like, "Just stop!" As the mayor of the city, the mayor from the city of Canning Light walked past, and I hear this, "It's all right, Megan, it's just boys." And I was like, "Oh my God." And so there is never a good time to have kids, and you just have to roll with the punches. And if people don't understand, they're just, pretty much, that's right. And kids are just going to do what they want to do. So it is what it is.
Just one more question about single-use plastics. Is there an update about the ban?
I'm not really across it. Where I understood it was that the first round of bans came in at the end of December. They're probably not doing compliance on those. To give businesses a time to adjust, they probably won't do compliance until about the middle of the year on that first suite of items. There's a second suite of items that should be ready to come in at the end of this December. So that's where your coffee cups and some of the more tricky items will get included towards the end of the year. So everyone get your nice reusable cup ready, because your disposable cup's about to disappear from your life.
Any other questions for our panel?
I have a question for Yaxi. You were talking about that time when the market's not quite right.
Yeah.
And that I'm really interested in what you're talking about, curiosity, just going out there and talking to people and just learning. And how do you find that patience between, I've got to get this stuff going, but the market's not right? So what skills did you use to kind of push through?
I think it's back to when I started. I know, like, the sort of being at IPO, I give myself about 12 months, no income. So even from the 2012 when I got golf, being an entrepreneur, just like all the money comes in, go to the tickets and then flying to going to my sites, all spent. So there was just, so one thing I did right for myself is lower the debt. To making sure there's no debt, the life is like really compact, so it's nothing flash or luxury. So even you're geared up for IPO or being an SSD, it's quite glorified job, but still gonna be down to earth. This is a startup. Everything's low key. So number one is reduce the debt so that you can sustain. It's a journey. Has to be sustainable, profit or not. Mining, especially exploration, is spending money. So number one is be able to, my life side, keeping the debt low, continue paying off the mortgage, and also reduce the expenditures going out the door. I would do most of the things myself, but doing that, and I actually be able to enhance my knowledge in geological, the things not my expertise. So actually it is again through a hardship of learning things that I'm probably not going to have the opportunity. I find to the end, going through the IPO process, to engage third-party expertise and drive and writing all of the geological independent reports, and I myself have to go through line by line by lines. So that's the legal. Is actually be able to run a company. I have to be able to cross every areas, and that pushed me to that point. The second thing is no time limits. So you're going to have to be really patient to know that this is the end goals, and then give yourself the sort of the time to do it, and it will happen. So, and then for me, is nothing to lose. So I think I have achieved quite a lot in my career. Like always think, okay, if I go back to find a job, I can. So it's nothing to lose. But this is my dream and passion. I wanted to have a real business and real mining company. This is the only way. So I'm gonna have to push it. And then even if the door doesn't open to me, other doors will open. So those are the things I think probably I learned from my journey in the initial very hard 4 months of doing door knockings and basically stay in the budget hotels and going to people, sitting in the office, waiting for the directors to be available for like 4 hours. And then to the end, there's still no investment, but you only just need one. So my first investment is $250,000. After the meeting, two hours later, money in the bank. So, but it was like taking so long. But I thought it was so much pressure to getting the money. But I feel my real pressure started with people put the money in my bank. And I said, what if like I can't get this to IPO, right? So money in the bank, time to start real spending this money to the expertise, and I can't recoup this money. And that is where I really stress, and it feels like the pressure was on. Yeah.
Questions? We'll go here, then Mel. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for like individuals trying to start out their career in sustainability and like big change?
go for it.
I think you just need to work out what it is or which stream you'd like to start with. There's no limit to that. It depends on whether you want to specialise in an area or whether you're happy to be a generalist. Careers are much longer than I thought when I was a young person coming straight out of uni. So what you decide to do first doesn't mean that's what you're going to end up doing. So just start somewhere that's fun would be my advice to you. If you just want to be out planting trees or doing something cool, it's a good place to start there, because when you're young and flexible, you can do stuff like that. Don't expect to get paid very much money, but it's fun, right? And when you're starting out, it's a good way to learn the basics. And then as you go through, you follow where your interest takes you. No one, other than someone who perhaps starts their own business and runs a successful business, no one makes much money in the sustainability gig, right? So you have to get your kick somewhere else. If your job's not fun, stop doing it, do something else. That would be my advice to you.
Mel, you have a question?
Yeah, it's just, Nina, you mentioned dreaming big, so it's really for all of you, I guess, like 10 years' time, like what are your dreams, what sort of change would you like to see, you know, that you could make in the world, really, in your areas that you're doing?
Are you thinking more specifically for our companies? Yeah. Of course, I would love to see all our projects be, all our projects are scalable pending funding. So give me more money and I can expand, to other places in Tanzania, other places in Africa, other places in Asia or other developing countries. And I would love to do that, or retrain others, for example, to do our mushroom project in other places. So I would love to be able to do that, take the projects that we have developed now and see them grow and expand and come into different countries and other communities than the 35,000 people that we are working with now. But of course that demands more funding. That would also take that I take a much more backseat role in the sense of doing a lot more strategic planning and less hands-on than I'm doing now. But I would be perfectly fine with that if that means that we could change lives of many more people.
Yeah, for me, it's probably more specific for my business. So from Accelerate being listed, and we hit the rock bottom 12 months after that, and got a lot of angry shareholders, and then now we rebounded back to a sustainable level, and then going to the future is more into the production. So I think for me, is always wanted the company to be transformational from exploration to production. And not lots of exploration company has that inspirational vision. That for me is, I wanted to see that to come true in the next sort of short term, 2 to 3 years. And after that, really be the business, actually to be the employment choice, and people wanted to working for the organizations, and investments of choice is that to tap into that sustainability, is that we're looking into the future, doing things better, and also making profit. It is a sustainable business.
I guess my driver has always been that I need my work to mean something. I need to be able to live my values when I work. I need my work to make a difference in the world, and sometimes that means that I get paid, sometimes that means I don't get paid, but I need to be able to think that I'm working towards something that means something to me. So I think you can dream big and make enormous success in the business world. I think you can dream big and make small incremental changes that make the world a better place. I think it's different for everyone.
Yeah. Yes.
So it seems obvious that funding is like a major driving force behind making positive change or building something big. So as like a potential entrepreneur starting out totally blind to it, maybe with a big idea, what kind of key points could you say to do or don't do, and where would you start to look for funding?
It's called the Triple F Fund. Have you heard of that? Friends, Family and Fools. It's honestly how pretty much every entrepreneur starts their business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I also like, as we were talking about International Women's Day and all the biases, when you go to investors and pitch, there is obviously a lot of bias, gender-based bias going on, whether it's conscious or unconscious. A lot of research shows that women are being asked how they will not fail, and men are being asked how will they win. And by being aware of that as women, we can be prepared to turn those questions around from being a defense of how we are not going to lose to be, no, this is actually how we are going to win. And be over-prepared and know that you're going to be asked those questions and turn them to your advantage. And yeah, don't be intimidated by having to speak to a lot of men about your ideas, and go and do it. You know, I sort of work with a percentage of, like, I ask 100 people, maybe I get, you know, between 5, 10, you know, maybes along the way, then it's a good day.
I think it is the point of a difference. In different industries, the rates of fund slightly different. So tech is different, mining is different, sort of not-for-profit is also different. You go into that group of people. I probably wouldn't go into my family friends, and I find that really personal to me. It just hurts me when the business, because for mine it's high-risk business. So then, so my first round of funding is always professionals. Like, they know the risk, they can see the potential. So you go for the people that can see the potentials, and then they will help you to reach the second round and third round. So I think it's important to, like, especially when you start up, you're cheap. So your initial investment is critical. You give them opportunity to put their money, park their money somewhere, potentially 10, 100 times of their investment. So that's your sales pitch. And you're gonna go into these people, potentially bring more money in. Because if they have limited funding, that's your limit. And all they're asking is, oh, when are we gonna get my money back? And then you're gonna find someone else. So I would suggest that going to people with the sort of professional, understand the industry, understand the risk, and you actually, they will help you, when they put their money in you, they will help you to open up the network. They will help you to find your team members. They will help you to find more resource and help you to success, because then that's how they sort of have their return. So I think, yeah, just going to the right network and selling the ideas, and sort of knows that there's abundant money out there, but people with entrepreneurs and that inspiration wanted to do something is rare. It's very rare. And you're willing to take the time and take the risk, that sets yourself apart from the rest. Yeah.
Depending on your business, hopefully you have something to sell, right? So that makes a big difference, because funding doesn't just appear in your bank account overnight. And if you've got to pay for things, you need to start selling as soon as humanly possible. And if you can sell something, that helps de-risk an investment. So whatever it is that you plan to do, just start doing it, and just demonstrate that there's a market for what it is that you're trying to do. And if you go out early and demonstrate that there is a market, then you've helped de-risk that for investors. But if you find that there's no market, then you've saved yourself a whole lot of time and energy as well. So I would say just get started early and try and sell to keep yourself afloat until the money does come in.
No, you're talking about risks. I don't know, for me that was a learning curve to identify risks around my company, and identifying all the different things that could go wrong, and mitigate and thinking out solutions to these risks before they had happened while we were still on paper. That was definitely something I had to learn to think in that way, and having that prepared before I went and presented my idea to anybody. But it was a really, really good exercise, and I am hopefully now on forefront with any risk we could potentially meet. Yeah.
Thank you. That's all we actually have time for today, but you're more than welcome to stick around and have some refreshments, and you can ask our panellists any questions. Thank you again, Hayley, Yaxi and Nina, for taking your time to share your stories and celebrate International Women's Day or International Women's Week or Year with us.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate it. So thank you.